Hi guys, welcome to another Elementor video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, recently we did a text expand and contract automation on the Divi theme. And we had a great question. Somebody says, well, can you do it with the Elementor page builder? Absolutely, it's almost exactly the same thing. And this is a really nice little feature to have on your website. It's the sort of thing that's going to get people's eyes on it really quickly, which is just what you want with a website. So let me take you through it. So here we are on the site, and if you look at the text here, it's going to contract, disappear, and then it's going to come back in again. And this is a really eye-catching feature to have on your site. Like I said earlier, we did this recently with the Divi theme. Somebody's asked us to do it with Elementor, which is what we've got here. So let's get started. I've got this page open with my Elementor Builder here. I'm going to delete this section and we'll start from scratch. Okay, I'm going to add a new section. I'm going to hit the little plus right there. I'm going to use a single column for it. And if we go over to our matrix that we're on at the moment, I'm just going to throw in a little text editor module. I've not got any real text, so I'll just copy this lorem ipsum a couple of times to give us a bit of body in there. That'll do fine. Style wise, I'm going to leave it pretty much as it is. I'm just going to align it to the middle there. And let's give our section just a little bit of breathing room. Back into the section, little dots right there. Over to advanced is always where you'll find padding. I'm going to give it 50 pixels all the way. Great. Well, we're going to be working on the column today that this is in. So we've got a little grey icon there. If we click on that, left click, that'll take us to the column, as you can see there. I've got Elementor Pro here, so I'm going to use the custom CSS box. Anybody who's using the free version of Elementor, you can do the same thing in your additional CSS panel within your site. Anybody who doesn't know where that is, if you go down to your dashboard, once at the dashboard, with most themes, if you go down to Appearance and then Customize, it'll take you to this page here. And most of them will have an additional CSS panel and you can put your CSS in here. If yours doesn't, have a look at your theme documentation. Most themes will have somewhere to add additional CSS. I'm using the free Hello theme, which is actually built by Elementor. I would suggest you use that if you're using Elementor as it's built for it. Okay, well, let's get back to it. Okay, well, we've got to do a bit of CSS coding to make this work today. And don't let that put you off. CSS is a wonderful thing. You can't break your site with it, so don't be afraid of it. If you do something and you don't like what's happened, just delete it. Your site will go back to how it was before. Now, we're going to be building an animation with keyframes. And as I've mentioned before, keyframes are a little bit like stop animation video. Whereas if you've got a timeline, and you can make various different things happen over time. And we're going to play with the width of a column and also the opacity of the text within that column over a 15-second timeline. Really easy to do, really dramatic results. Now, I will put any code I write down below the video if you just want to copy and paste and edit to fit whatever you're doing. I would encourage you to write it out though, because once you learn this, it's really easy and it will take your editing skills to the next level. CSS really is a wonderful thing to learn and it's great fun too. So let's get back to the build. First thing I'm going to do is invent a class name for our column here. And I'm going to call mine txgrow, I think. All class names have a dot or a period in front of them. So we'll say txgrow. You can call yours what you want, but it wants to be unique. I like mine to mean something to me. Okay, well, let's open and close some curly brackets. And in between, we can tell this thing what we actually want it to do. So I want mine to animate, so I'm going to say animation. Then I have to come up with a name for the animation, so I'm going to say colon. And let's call it growt. Again, that's kind of my shorthand for grow text. I want it to run for about 15 seconds, so 15s. I want to keep going and going and going, so I'm going to say infinite. I want it to be smooth, so I'm going to say linear, L-I-N-E-A-R. Great. Just going to take that gap away right there. Now we've told it what we want it to do, we've actually got to create this animation. I'm going to use keyframes to do this today. As I mentioned earlier, keyframes are like stop frame animation. You can make things occur at certain times during a timeline. So for keyframes, we're going to say at keyframes. Then the name of the animation that we gave it, which was growt. Now we can open and close some more curly brackets and tell it exactly what we want it to do. So at 0%, or basically when the page loads, second one of our 15 seconds up there, 0%, we can open and close some more curly brackets and tell it what we want it to do. Well, I'm going to be playing with the width on this thing. So I'm going to say width. I'm going to have it start off, say, 10% of its width. So I'm going to put a colon after the width. I'm going to say 10%. Great. Now I'm going to copy that several times. From the 0% to our first curly bracket there, Control C to copy. I'm going to drop down, paste, Control V, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we'll say 10%. We'll say 20%, 30%, 40%. And I wanted to have a little pause so it stays full width for a little while, so it gives people a little chance to read it. So I'm going to jump up to 80% from 40%. Then 90%. And then 100%. Which is right at the end of our 15 seconds right there. And width wise, I'm going to have it go from 10% to perhaps 30%, and to 50%, and then 80%. And when it gets to 40%, I want it to be 100% of the width. So it's pretty much exactly the same as it is there. And the reason we can't see anything happening at the moment, we haven't applied this class to this column. I think if I did that when I was writing this, it would be going back and forth like crazy. So let's get some of this done first, then I'll apply it so you can see what's going on. But I want it to stay at 100% width from 40% of the time to 80% of the time. So I'm going to put a comma after that. And I'm going to include 50%. Then a comma, and I'm going to include 60%. Another comma includes 70%. So it's going to stay at 100% width along those time periods right there. Great. Then when it gets back to 80%, I want it to shrink down to 50% of the width. 90%, let's take that down to 20. And it can end up at 10% where we had it at the 100% at the 15-second mark. But I also want it to disappear as well. In fact, let's give it its animation now so you can see what's going on. So we gave it this class name of txgrow up here. So you want to copy it without the dot when you're applying it. So it's txgrow. I'm going to copy that in the advanced at the top. CSS class name. Watch what happens when I put that in there. It's starting to do its thing. It's staying there. And it's coming back. But I want mine to stay in the middle. And I kind of want it to fade out and fade back in. I don't want it to be pushing this section down. I don't want it to get any deeper at all. So we can add a bit of CSS to prevent that. First thing, let's put it in the middle. So under the class name, when we did the animation here, right at the end there, I'm going to drop down one more. I'm going to say margin, colon, auto. That should put it in the middle. Fantastic. Then I'm going to drop down one more. I'm going to give it a fixed height. I'm going to say height. I think 100 pixels should probably do it, 100 px. As you can see, the little box is showing us how tall that is. And you may have noticed now when it's coming back in and expanding like that, that the text is not pushing that section down below. But we still got that text spelling out, and that's called overflow. So let's hide that overflow. I'm going to drop down, I'm going to say overflow, colon, hidden. So nothing outside of our 100 pixel box now will be shown. That's looking good. I just need to add my little fade effect now. So at 0%, just after the semicolon there, I'm going to say opacity, colon, 0, semicolon. And as you can see, that's kind of faded it out, but I only wanted it faded out right at the beginning and right at the end. So I'm going to copy that opacity 0. I'm going to add it just after my 100% mark there, the 10% width mark. But I want to bring it back. So on the 10% mark, just after the 30, the semicolon, I'm going to put it in there and change that to a 1, which will be fully visible. And I want to make sure it stays there all the way up to our 80% at least. So I'm going to copy the opacity 1. And at the 80% mark, just after the semicolon, I'm going to paste that in there. So it fades out right at the end there, disappears and fades back in, and it's nice and sharp and crisp. And that should do it for us. And I'll copy this, I'll put it down below the video. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a great habit to get into writing this. It will really improve your editing. So let's make sure this is going to work on the front end. I'm going to save draft. Let's hit the little eyeball to see it. And here we are. There's our little txgrow. And if you want it to happen faster, make that 15 seconds shorter, like 10 seconds or something. If you want it to slow it down even more, make that 15 seconds larger, perhaps 20 seconds or something like that. And that's a really nice little eye-catching effect. Fantastic. Okay, so there we have it. We've got a little expanding text module that contracts and expands and reveals the text. Really nice little eye-catching thing. And I really appreciate the person that asked that question. I hope you've enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's always great to hear from you. If you have enjoyed this today, have a look at our little simple CSS playlist. It should pop up over there any minute now. We've got a lot of things on there that may interest you. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, pop them below the video. I'll do my best to answer them for you or make a little demo video like this one. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.